How's it going, everyone? It's Avi from Weather Sponge 5000. Today is January 12th, 2022. As today, we're going to focus on this next cross-country, potentially extreme snowstorm that could bring well over a foot of snow in many states here along the East Coast, as well as potentially the Midwest. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. So let's begin by taking a look at the current radar for the lower 48 of the United States, and you see that not much is really going on. However, the feature we're going to focus on in this video is this feature right here that's bringing some rain showers and snow showers throughout the west coast of Canada at this time, and we're going to see a low pressure system pretty much develop out of a derivative of this original low pressure system, and it'll move southward into the United States into a more unstable environment for heavier snowfall to occur. And this is where we could see this major snowstorm for a lot of you guys over the next week. And for a lot of you guys, it could be your first major snowstorm of the year, especially in areas further closer to the southeast. So this is definitely something you guys want to pay very close attention to over the next several days, because again, this could be your first major snowstorm in quite a while. And if we were to take a look at what the European model and the GFS model is forecasting, at this point, there's pretty high certainty with both computer models. Typically, when we're talking about forecasts around like 4 to 5 days out for the Northeast, such as in this case, it's typically uncertain because we have two of the main computer models in pretty big disagreement when it comes to the trajectory of the storm, the strength of the storm, and the amount of snowfall you receive. But in this case, it seems like both the European model and the GFS model are in the same page. So to show you how this storm will develop as it moves eastward, you see that we see a low pressure system pretty much develop off the Pacific Northwest coast, pretty much developing as a typical, regular, average Alberta clipper you'd see move through the United States during the winter. And you see that just north of this low pressure system, we do see a little bit of snow showers throughout southern Canada. And it's not only the Alberta clipper that's going to be the primary cause of this major snowstorm. It's also just going to be the high amount of unstable air that's going to be located throughout the United States for this week, because along the eastern half of the United States, we've been experiencing temperatures well below average. I'm talking about 20 to 30 degrees below average in some cases, and record-breaking cold in some areas. You're going to see that this will set up for an unstable environment because we see a strong northwesterly flow associated with this past low pressure system that moved through the northeast, and that's going to bring that cold air further southward for a very unstable environment to develop, because of course that cold air is going to interact with a very warm air mass that's located right around the Gulf of Mexico, and that's going to force a little bit more lift in the atmosphere for this low pressure system to rapidly intensify as it moves southeastward. And you see that we begin to see snow showers really develop as it does begin to tap into that very warm Gulf of Mexico moisture that's just to the south of it, and we do see heavier bands of snow develop throughout the Midwest at this time, and this could bring snowfall close to a foot of snow in some areas in the Midwest. So it's definitely something you want to pay attention to, but it doesn't end there. Like I said, there's going to be a very large cross-country snowstorm impacting potentially up to 34 states, which of course is more than half of the United States in terms of at least the amount of states it's going to impact. Not, I wouldn't say necessarily the size, especially if we're counting Alaska, which is huge among itself. But the point is that there's going to be a very large and impactful snowstorm that'll impact millions of people throughout the United States, as this should move southeastward, and we're sort of gonna see this area of snow sort of weaken a little bit based on the European model, but we do expect that area of snow to eventually expand once again as it heads further southeastward once it encounters another area of cold air that's going to be located towards the eastern half of the United States by a stronger northwesterly flow that's going to cool down the temperatures just enough for the southeast to get involved in some heavy snowfall. And you see that this snowfall could be extremely heavy, where we're talking about snowfall rates equivalent to potentially an inch an hour. And if we were to continue to move forward, you see that right around the Sunday timeframe, this approaches Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and extending to Georgia. They're experiencing very heavy snowfall, and even extending to the Northeast. You guys are seeing just probably the biggest snowstorm of the year for you guys, right around the 114-hour mark on Monday. And continuing to move forward, you see that this impacts New England as well, and the pressure suddenly drops to 982 millibars, which is very, very powerful. So again, this unstable environment is just going to set up for a very impactful snowstorm. And if you were to take a look at a GFS model, it's pretty much stating the same thing as the GFS model. As of the latest 18Z run, is still taking extremely heavy snowfall. It's just going to be very impactful throughout the Midwest, and it's bringing the same to the Southeast as well. And the Mid-Atlantic, I'd say, should get the worst of the snowfall, and you see the Northeast even gets involved. But it might be one of those storms where it's going to be sort of where we're going to keep an eye on that Interstate 95 corridor, because it could be one of those storms where we're going to need to keep track of the rain snow line to determine how much snowfall you experience in the major cities. I'd say for the northwestern portion of the Northeast, it's pretty much likely you will experience a major snowstorm, but it becomes a little, and while the big cities in the Northeast are definitely experiencing heavy snowfall too, such as Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, as well as New York City, it's still a little bit more uncertain of how much snowfall, because we're going to see how much rain, we're going to need to see how much warm air intrudes the major cities to see how much rain will mix in to really determine the final snowfall accumulation amount, as it's going to take several days to really iron that out. While both the computer models are agreeing around the same thing, where New York City is maybe receiving around 3 to 6 and maybe 6 to 12 inches as of the latest GFS model run, there's still a lot of days to go, and the forecast could easily change maybe further eastward to where New York City receives less snow, or potentially further westward. But now I'm talking about further eastward, where we could see maybe the low pressure system move eastward enough to where it'll be an all snow event for New York City, and you'll be talking about a foot of snow rather than maybe only 3 inches of snow if it were to take the western, the western track. So we're just gonna have to wait and see. It's gonna be very close forecast for the big cities, but I'd say at this point, with both the European model and the GFS model agreeing, I'd say it's pretty certain that we're gonna see a major snowstorm. It's pretty much inevitable, I'd say, for the Midwest, and it's very likely for the Southeast. And I'd even go as far as to say, even for Northeast, I think the chance of a major snowstorm is pretty likely at this point, as it seems like both the computer models been persistent on the same idea, bringing almost the exact same trajectory. And while there will certainly be differences over the next couple of days that will change the amount of snow you receive, I'd say at least somewhere in the Northeast you will experience a major snowstorm. I could say that with confidence. So this is something you need to be aware of in the Northeast. And again, there's still uncertainty with this regarding where that rain snow line will be. So we definitely need to pay close attention to that. Now let's take a look at the snowfall accumulation forecast for the GFS model. And you see that the GFS model wants to bring well over 6 inches over a large area of the United States, and there's even a good amount of areas in the GFS model's case receiving over a foot of snow. You see that extending through North Dakota, Minnesota, as well as South Dakota, Iowa, and extending into Missouri as well. You're receiving an area of 6 to 12 inches right here. But even if you were to move further southward, you see that right around the Mississippi River Valley, you're receiving well over a foot of snow, which is considered major at this point, and it's definitely something we're going to need to pay close attention to. The Appalachian Mountain Ranges is receiving over a foot of snow as well, and even throughout the upper Northeast, you're receiving over a foot. In the higher elevations of the Northeast, you're receiving over a foot of snow, while Pennsylvania and areas just in the lower elevations are still receiving well over 6 inches of snow. And in terms of major cities, the GFS model wants to bring maybe around 3 to 6 inches to Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, it's the GFS model is a little bit less lenient on bringing heavy snow to Philadelphia, but you see in New York City, you're pretty much right around the 6 to 12 inch category. And Boston, it's also going to be a close forecast for you guys because any minuscule changes in the forecast can make a big difference in terms of how much snow you receive along the Interstate 95 corridor. So that's something we need to be aware of. But you see that large area of the United States will experience major snow out of this. So I want you guys to at least be aware of this and potentially prepare for the possibility of an extreme amount of snowfall. Now let's take a look at the European model further. For this forecast, you see that the European model is bringing still a large area of 6 to 12 inches of snow, and it's bringing the snowfall further eastward where it impacts more Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and New York City, where even in the New York City suburbs, you're receiving over 12 inches of snow, and New York City is receiving around 6 to 12. So it's going to be very close, this forecast. Boston is also right on the border, but I'd say a major snowstorm is likely. So you guys need to definitely prepare all throughout the East Coast as well as the Midwest for potentially your biggest snowstorm of the year, or one of the biggest you'll experience in quite a long time, because I think this does have the potential to become very, very impactful for a lot of the United States. So that's certainly something we're going to need to pay close attention to over the next several days. What will determine really the amount of snowfall you receive is, of course, the trajectory. We need to see where that rain snow line will be, and that's pretty much going to be determined by this ridge that's going to be located just to the east of this low pressure system, where it positions itself. So we're going to need to pay close attention to that, because if this ridge is a little eastward, we would see more snow along the East Coast. We're also going to need to pay attention to how far south this jet stream dips, because that will determine the amount of unstable air, how much of a northwesterly flow there will be over the next several days. That will determine the amount this storm strengthens. So it's definitely something we're going to need to pay close attention to throughout the United States for this week. Just very heavy snowfall and a very impactful storm. Now, let's take a look at the Arctic oscillation over the next several days. You see that we're expected to dip down into the negative Arctic oscillation, which would mean that we're more prone to experience heavy snowstorms and colder air. So that could encourage a more unstable environment for the eastern half of the United States for more major and significant snowstorm to occur. So that's definitely something we're going to pay attention to over the next several days. So here is my official snowfall forecast. Keep in mind, this is just my speculation, and as of right now, especially for the Northeast, this is far from certain. I want to keep that in mind. But if we were to take a look at the forecast and how it is right now, what the computer models are saying as of right now, this is what you should expect. You should expect 6 to 12 inches throughout Minnesota, Des Moines, Iowa, extending to North Dakota, South Dakota, 3 to 6 inches just outside of it. But I wouldn't be surprised by tomorrow I will rise up that snowfall forecast, as we've been seeing a common trend with the computer models that we're going to see a little bit more than 3 to 6 inches throughout the Mississippi River Valley and the border of Kentucky and Tennessee. But you see that I'm expecting a large 12 to 24 inches in the higher elevations of North Carolina. This could even extend to Virginia and West Virginia. And I'm expecting 6 to 12 inches of snow. This includes Washington, D.C., New York City, Boston. You're right on the border between 6 to 12 and 3 to 6. And then 12 to 24 inches just outside of that in the higher elevations of New England. So that's something you guys want to pay close attention to. Keep that in mind. This will be a major snowstorm that impact 34 states. So it will impact a lot, millions of people. So at least be aware of it. And I'd say prepare in the Midwest, because a snowstorm is very imminent and likely for you guys over the next couple of days. But before I begin, make sure, but anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. And I hope you guys have a good day.